Here we go. You know what I'm saying? You gonna worry about how I look.
Hey,
Let's close your eyes. You know what I'm saying? Do with your eyes.
you
Read,
close your eyes. Maybe I
read
feel
with
better
your
if you
eyes
close
closed.
your eyes.
Read with your eyes closed, okay?
Sounds good. The spirit gonna lead me.
Spirit, let
Okay.
spirit be your eyes.
There you go. Now, what you say on that song? Talk about y'all call it my third eye. It's really my first eye. The other two is the weakest. I was like, straight like that.
Got one eye like a cyclops.
Come on.
Third one. Actually, it's the first one. The two you see is the worst ones. These not even lit. This is how you see bull. You see all the bullshit with these eyes.
I was like, okay, spin that hot fire. Y'all is the cutest. I really love this picture.
That's my bookmark.
Yes. Where the other one at? Oh, my bad. What's on here? Never mind.
This one?
Yeah. Let me hold that one.
All right.
All right. You start?
All right. First of all, let's do a synopsis, a little summary of what we read before. What you remember from before?
Okay, so first, let's say what book it is. All right, y'all. So we are reading. We about to go hop back in this joint of Water and the Spirit by Malidoma Patrice Somé. And we read the intro in the first chapter a few days ago. And that intro was hitting super hard, right? We kind of got into how colonists were affecting the place where the author is from, and how he was stolen and basically taken by Jesuits. And that was the reason why he really felt like he was a part of two different worlds, and he could never really fully fit in either one. But he was fulfilling his name's prophecy really by being a part of that world, and would later continue to be a part of that world when he left Africa to come to America. He came to America, right?
Well, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Eventually, later in life, but like in the book,
talking about like the later joint.
In the book, he's talking about being like taken to like.
No, not that part.
Oh.
When he actually, like, after his initiation and after he had, spent some time at home and the elders sent him to college, it was in, where was it? It was in America.
I don't remember, but I know he came to America and did a lot of stuff in America though. Yeah. So eventually he came to America in his elder years, so that's over after initiation. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but I'm not sure the timeline. You feel me? Mm-hmm. But what I remember specifically reading the last time was, some things I took away was the grandparent-grandchild connection, the spiritual connection, and how the grandchild is the child that is just coming from spirit world, and the grandparent is soon to go back to spirit world. So they both have messages for each other. You feel me? Mm-hmm. They both have spiritual messages for each other, spiritual connection, a spiritual bond that is very important. But why I'm thinking right now, like, like I'm sure that that's true, but I'm also sure that how on my 3 different types of people. So like high key, like I'm sure that that's true, that like, the elders and the youth have a specific connection, but I know that there's certain people who may be blocked off from experiencing this
For
connection.
sure, for
Even
sure,
if
for
you
sure.
have your grandparents in your life, maybe the grandparents blocked off, or something, or the parent has done something that has caused the block in the in
Mm-hmm.
which we kind of get in this book, as you saw, like with the
With
father,
Malidoma's dad, yeah, yeah.
blocked the whole, fucked up the
Whew.
whole shit. But he said that his father, Malidoma's father, was like, his life is fucked up this way because he ain't never have a connection with his grandfather. So he
Mm-hmm.
blamed it on that, missing that piece, that connection. But you seen what happened with that. And I took from that is like, how key we spoke about this before. It's like, we wonder why, like, there's churches on every corner and every block in most black neighborhoods, but they ain't nobody in the motherfuckers. Cause niggas
Right.
ain't trying to die. Like, niggas really know, niggas really know that they spirit will, like, you feel me, will not be the same.
Mm.
You feel
Wait, you
me?
got to get into why you're saying that, because so basically the dad, because he had his grandfather to kind of like usher him into this world for real and kind of give him certain truths about himself and everything. Down the line, his dad, the basically Malidoma's granddad, is like he's like this huge spiritual person connected to nature and everything because of his past, but like it's kind of like how you said though, it's like everything it was kind of, it had to balance itself out for real. His dad did what he had to do so that Malidoma's grandfather could be who he was to everybody, and their family could extend those graces and food and everything that they had in abundance to the rest of the people or whatever. But the Malidoma's dad, he was missing that. And so basically he didn't follow strictly with the spiritual rituals and everything, and ended up not only being a part of their family, but him and his wife went to this, what was it, a priest?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he went to a priest. And so he didn't do this ritual for his twin daughters, y'all. And he had two more children after that. And all four of them motherfuckers died. Like, all of them.
Everybody.
Like,
All
yo,
the kids,
his
all
dad
the kids in
kept
the world.
telling him.
He was about to die. He was about to die. He finally gave in and did the ancestral family rituals.
Mhm.
The thing is
After,
that
way after.
that's the whole point. The whole point is, we as black people are alive and we thrive when we are connected to ourselves spiritually. There are certain cultures that hold specific rituals, you know what I'm saying? Specific spiritual rituals. And they practice these over and over, they practice these literally yearly, or they practice them culturally,
Mm-hmm.
daily, whatever. Like, they practice these in their culture, a part of their lifestyle. And it might be different all over, different cultures. But the thing is, there are different indigenous cultures that practice spiritual rituals, and that's what keeps them connected and lively. You feel me? Keep them one, keep them a family, keep them connected to nature, keep them connected to the universe, the earth, whatever you
Right.
want to call it. And then, long story short, because we kind of have that same thing, like, we naturally, without a religious book, black people, we naturally know how to just tap in and connect. You feel me?
Yeah.
The thing is, and what the book does well in explaining is that when the white man or the European, the white Africans come with their religious books and indoctrinate indigenous cultures and make them put this religious book over their culture, it literally kills, like literally destroys the culture. Like literally, people die. Like it, like
Yeah.
literally
And
die.
I feel it's like you bring in this external source, you know, for you to feel validation. And so as a people, like once you don't stay connected and don't kind of like hold those traditions near and dear, those rituals near and dear, it starts to make you feel like you're missing something if you don't have a tangible thing to look to. But it's that trick because it's all inside of you. Like you don't need this tangible thing if you actually even paid attention to what has been done, what has existed, what is natural, and what already and always is within you and around you and supporting you and guiding you. Like it make you feel like you can't trust yourself. And I feel like that is what takes away that opportunity to be living and thriving the way that you said, you know.
Like how can nothing wrong with differences in culture, differences in spirituality, religion, blah blah blah. But the thing is, what ends up happening is, like, for example, we talked about this the other day. It is natural for Black people to tap in and talk to their ancestors. Black babies, if somebody passed, blah 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 blah. When talking to the Christians nowadays, that is heathen. That is, they rebuke stuff like that. That type of behavior is demonic. Yes, it's devil worshiping to literally talk to your fucking dead aunt. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, no cap. They will argue with you and be like, no, I will never praise my ancestors. I only talk to Jesus. Like literally, like that's literally their mind state. They don't believe in stuff like that. So when you do that and disconnect yourself from your ancestors and connect yourself to a false god, they just literally die if you don't allow your ancestors to help you, and it can't help you live. It can't help you. They always will help you as much as they can. But when you take yourself out of the question,
I'm about to say you putting up that barrier
you're
to their
blocking
help
yourself
and
from
their
them helping
guidance.
you as much as they reaching out. So even you feel me? So it's like, even if you don't block it, then you good. Like, even if you're not reaching out, but you don't block. So the thing is, like, you could tap in, go ahead, play around with the Bible and all these religions, but don't stop your ancestral shit. Like, don't stop your shit.
Don't speak against it. Yeah.
Don't choose one over the other. That's the thing. What
Right.
Pops did was Lily was like, nah, with all the ritual shit. You feel me? My child is baptized. Fuck all that other shit. And that's what we do now, right now, 2021, whatever. Like, that's what 2022, that's what we're doing right now. Like, literally, like, fuck all that African shit. That's voodoo. You feel me? Like, fuck all of that candle shit and the incense and the sage and fuck all of that shit.
Like, not even, you know, one thing that I really want to mention
ain't even
is
nothing.
the fact,
And sage and shit.
but you know, even like the fact that we be going to Africa a lot when we talk about ancestors. And what I've recently learned is that some of us was straight from indigenous to this land type shit and don't know that at all. Like, don't know that whatsoever.
What you mean by that? Because that's like an oxymoron. That's a paradox. You feel me? Like, when niggas say shit like that, it's like, it's really, that means more than what you say. So like, you know, when people say like, oh, I go back to this land other than Africa, it's telling you not necessarily that like that's, you feel me? Like, it's that means, what all that means is, you feel like, it's just the way we've been taught history is that it's like niggas in Africa up until a certain point in time, and then they were taken all over the world. That's not true. So like,
I
Africans
know.
were Africans. Those people that you saying you came from were Africans. So you're
Oh,
like,
obviously, we know everybody came and stemmed from Africa. We know that.
yeah. So like to play like it's it's just like you ain't even gotta play like because it's like what African is just a word. It's not like really like saying that you came from there. It's literally just like that's where everything is traced back to. So like it don't even matter. Like you feel me?
I
Like
guess I mean that to say that all Black people that aren't like don't have direct relation to another place that's not Africa, we all think we was brought over here as slaves, like, and that's
yeah, like
not the case is what I'm saying. That's all. Not that
yeah,
we
that's
not
what I
all
was
from
trying
there
to say. Like
anyway. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what that's all when that's what niggas say. That's all that means. It's like
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
don't go back to Africa. Some niggas is indigenous to other places. All that means is that hey, like it's just a statement that like you know what I'm saying. Like we weren't all brought over here on ships, but
right.
you feel me? Because that's the way we've been taught history type shit.
Yes, yes,
But
straight
to go
like
deep
that.
into that, well, Jesus gonna still lead back to Africa. Shit. So
Who
like
you reading first?
um yeah, but yeah, the last thing we was talking about was high key right now niggas is doing all different types of alternatives, spiritual
Mm-hmm.
practices, and literally denying black spirituality. You
Yeah.
feel me? And that's a problem type shit. And and high key like the little things, the little things, the really little things like lighting a fucking candle. You feel me? Could do way more. Could allow the ancestors in.
Yeah.
You feel me? And we're not doing nothing.
Yeah.
You feel me? But we do some whole other disrespectful stupid shit. Like you feel me? Like just do some whole other, and I mean disrespectful stupid shit. Like Europeanized shit. Like they take our shit Europeanized and give it back to us, and we just jack it like it is what it is. But it's literally
Mm-hmm.
disrespect. It's not reaching out. It's not allowing the ancestors in type shit. And we'll argue against that shit too. Like you know what I'm saying? Like I had conversations with intelligent men who told me that the shit is demon work. And it's like, so this book is letting me know like a part of reading, you feel me? Like a part of me felt bad for his pops, but a part of me was like, I ain't feel bad. Like, cause he choosing to do the shit.
I'm about to say he is. At the end of the day, there's consequences for the things that we do, and it's kind of like how we are living over here. You get warning after warning and guidance after guidance, and then you still decide that you're not gonna follow it and listen, and it's just like you be looking around like, man, why my shit like this? Why is all my shit fucked up? But you're literally going against your intuition, your ancestors, everything that's telling you or pointing you in the direction of what is more you. Even little shit like you said, like Nikenda, I mean, like sitting and being like intentional about breathing, being like, I'm trying to connect. Like that's like, you know what I mean? Little tiny shit that it takes 2 seconds to do and to be open. But like you said, it's people putting that barrier and feeling as though, like how I told you about the person, um they picking they separating it, they're taking God out of some stuff altogether, taking pieces and parts and thinking that they're really participating in one religion when you still you pick that side, but you negating certain things that's part of that religion too. Like just to be disconnected from yourself. And it doesn't add up. And it's not fruitful. You know what I mean? So
One thing, and the last thing that I want to say about chapter 1 in the introduction is high key, if you suffering, If you're going through some shit, you probably a healer. And
Talk about it.
putting that work on your ass so that you could realize how to heal, so that you could
Me.
heal, so that you could spread the healing. And I think he said something along the lines of that in the chapter one. It was like, you know, like let me see if I can find that shit. Like the nigga was when that shit hit me, it was like, yeah, like you gonna it's
So much.
that's why
It was so much that happened. We missing out on so much. Like we giving them this little synopsis, but oh
this is
my gosh, it's
yeah,
packed.
this is just one chapter, and like
Hmm.
we could talk hours in this one chapter, but
Right.
that's how much wisdom was in this bitch in this one chapter, and it's just like god damn, every line is like a poem, and it just makes you look at it in two different ways. So like shit different. You feel me? And you feel me? Rest in peace to the big bro Malidoma. He
Rest in
just transcended. You feel me? So libations to the big bro. I say.
peace.
But I don't remember what that's at, but I know it was something along the lines of that, like that's how spirit works. It's gonna put you through some shit. It's literally he said something along the lines that spirit will haunt you, haunt the healer so that you could heal.
Hmm.
So if you're going
Yeah.
through shit, if you're going through some shit, it's probably because you're a healer and you're not tapped in, you're not tapping into the healing. And you're gonna keep going through that shit. And that's why like niggas be going through shit and complaining and shit. You don't realize like niggas be thinking niggas. That's why I don't like all the cliche, stupid ass lines like everything happened for a reason. Blah, 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 blah. Like shut the fuck. What's the reason,
But
nigga?
that,
Don't
but
just
you
say
saying that, but you saying what the reason is though. You know what I mean? Like
type shit.
a lot of time they going through it because they ain't tapped in, because they not connected to self, because they not accepting their role, and because they unfortunately, I don't even want to say unfortunately, because obviously as we discussed, like everything
Unfortunate
is the
motherfucker.
way nah, look, everything is the way it's supposed to be. So some people, they create their own, they gotta figure out their own ways and come to later, but they end up not doing the rituals that they need and not having those connections so that they can be as tapped in, but then they also be denying themselves, as we said. So you know such is life, such is life. That brings about a certain response though, and reaction, and whoever's watching, you know what I mean? Like I feel as though knowing these stories about his dad's experience definitely affected Malidoma and him becoming that powerful person that he ended up being, and really taking the conversations with his grandfather, and his name, the name his grandfather gave him, serious. So basically,
No, no,
y'all,
no,
Mally,
no, no,
huh?
no. He named himself. So remember the naming ceremony?
Oh, that's true. That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
That
So
is
like,
very true.
he named himself.
Straight like
Grandpa,
that.
they name him motherfucker.
Straight like that.
And that shit we don't, that's rites of passage we need to start getting back into. Like doing shit like that, like while the baby's in the room, allowing the baby to you know what I'm saying, like doing ceremonies and shit to tap in, allow the baby to name himself, allow the baby to say his purpose, shit like that. Not saying when you do that exact shit, because that's some whole other that
Yeah.
shit. They know what they doing,
They
but
like shit.
high key, like whatever we know how to do,
And some
use
people
that,
do.
use,
Some
use
people
the tool.
definitely be tapped into spirit so that they can allow, like they don't give their baby a name that they don't feel as though their baby is connected to. I feel as though my name was definitely something like my dad chose. My dad actually picked my name, and I feel like it was something that it spoke to him, like from interacting with me energetically while I was in the womb, like, and I actually didn't even get my name until a couple days when we was about to leave the hospital. They was calling me baby girl, until they kind of had a feel for who I was. You know what I mean? And my name means love brings joy. And here I am, type shit.
No doubt. And that, and damn, I had one more thing, because I remember in the shit they were saying how how he was away. He was kidnapped. When he got kidnapped, he was away for like 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
That's when all that shit happened. So he ain't really experienced none of his brothers and sisters dying and shit like that.
No, that's not true. That was from his dad's first wife. His mother he has a whole different mom.
Yeah, he did experience that shit
Remember
as a
remember because he was like, I don't know what would make my mother marry my dad after knowing the truth about everything that happened before. Because I think the first wife also, didn't she die as well
Oh, so
because she
it
couldn't
happened
take
before
you
he
losing
was
all
a
her
child.
children.
It happened before he was a child.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was before he was
it
even
happened before
dead.
he was born. His brother died when he was alive, though, away from school.
Mhm.
The older kid.
Daniel, right?
Yeah, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that shit different. And it's like we sacrifice ourselves to the shit, and that's just why for me, like, like you said, everything happened in divine time and the way it's supposed to be. So like when it comes to life and being vegan and shit like that, it's like I'm not fucking vegan because I'm trying to live longer. Like whatever my time is my time. You feel me? Like it ain't got nothing to do with none of that. Like nigga, it's not like living long. Like you feel I hate when people be like, oh, that nigga died so young. I'd be like, yo, bro, like I don't got time for none of that. The whole point is we do this shit for a purpose. You feel me? So as long as I'm living with a purpose, that's it. If my purpose is done, it's time to go. It's time to go. That's just me.
Mm,
So like,
straight like that.
so high key, like I feel like if you're not living with a purpose, then you allowing somebody else to buy you. You
Mm.
feel me? You
Hmm.
allowing somebody else to buy you. That you know what I'm saying? It's like this is me. Like you like to living for a purpose, so you up for sale.
Yeah.
Shit. So like high key, I feel like it's time to get off the market as a man. That's just
Mm.
me. It's time to get off the market as a man. And this book is really inspiring niggas to get off the market. Like, get off the market, man. Stop putting your shit on. You know what I'm saying? Like, getting around niggas and niggas be women, like just people just buy for the right price. I do, and I'll be like, once niggas start talking like that, I don't even want. You feel me? So like, this book is hitting niggas in so different many angles. To me,
Yeah. For
and
real
it
though.
speaks why
And
like
we
niggas.
only on chapter one.
Yeah, it speaks why niggas out here dying in the music industries and all of this. The niggas is literally putting their life into this shit.
Yeah. For real.
When it, you know what I'm saying? So, and I I pray for niggas. Feel me? But I just try not to feel sorry for shit, because it's like I understand that shit is the way it's supposed to be. Like
Mm.
no matter the age, the person, situation, I know shit is the way it's supposed to be.
I think that's a beautiful note to start chapter two on.
So let's go.
All right.
It's on you.
Oh, it's on me. All right, that's fine. Chapter two, a grandfather's farewell. Grandfather died while I was still completing the fourth rainy season of my life. I had been so used to being around him while the grown up men and women were laboring at the farm that it took me a while to admit the stark truth that I was never going to find him again. Since my strange experience in the bush, my mother had kept her word and never taken me along with her when she went in search of dry wood. So on those days, my only companion was grandfather. One morning, when I went in search of him, I saw that the dew was still lingering on his door. I was puzzled because he was usually awake and about long before the penetrating he was usually awake and about long before the penetrating heat of the rising sun. Earlier, I had seen my father go into grandfather's room and stay there a long time. When he came back out, he had looked sad. Staring straight in front of him, he walked into my mother's sangala, taking no notice of me at all. When he emerged, his hand was full of ash. Some he poured in front of grandfather's door, and some in front of his own door, making a straight line in front of each. He went outside the compound and dropped more ash in front of the main gate, making another straight line. I had been staring at him the whole time he was conducting this strange ritual. But when I went outside to try to talk to him, he jumped nervously onto his English bicycle and left without saying anything. I lost sight of him as he rounded the corner of the house. Disappointed, I went back into the compound, wondering where to go. Nobody else was at home except me and grandfather. First, I thought I'd call him out. Then I thought I would go into his room. But I thought better of both those actions. Grandfather's sleeping room was also a spirit room, and I had been told never to disturb him when he was cloistered there. Deciding to wait for a while, I went outside the compound.
Our Miller fields from the green carpet as far as I could see. In the middle of the carpet was a dark circle of the well that served as our water supply during the rainy seasons. Birds and chicken were busy around it. I could not see them because the miller hid them, but the crackling sound that came from the general area suggested that there were a lot of them. Far to the left, two majestic green baobab trees made me think of all the stories grandfather had told me about them. He said that witches of all sizes illuminated their branches at night, burning the leaves with a milky fire that did not consume them. He also told me how these very same witches possessed the secret of separating their souls from their bodies at night and of turning their souls into light expanding to infinity. I had managed to get grandfather to promise that he would take me to see their fireworks from the roof of the house one night, but he never did. While thinking about all of this, I had unconsciously wandered over to the baobab trees and now stood in their deep shade. Standing beside the gigantic trunks, beneath their enormous branches, heavy with great fruits in their prime of their growth, I suddenly felt small. I walked around their great trunks, searching carefully to see if I could find some remnants of the orgiastic rituals the witches had indulged in the night before. I decided to run back home, for I knew grandfather would surely be up by this time. But I was disappointed to find that his door was still tightly closed. I looked into the room shared by myself, my mother, and my siblings. There was nobody there either. I went over to my father's door and tried to open it, but it was locked. Returning to my grandfather's door, I contemplated it for a while, then took a deep breath, knocked hesitantly, and called grandfather. Come in, that faint voice replied. I can't come out. Panting, I opened the door and walked up two little stairs. Then down another two stairs and stood in grandfather's room. I could see nothing. It was like entering a cave or walking into night. The room was so dark that I was sure one could sleep forever in it. Apart from a tiny hole in the ceiling that framed a tiny fragment of the immense firmament outside, everything else, including grandfather, was buried in the darkness. Come over here, brother, and be careful not to step on my medicine, grandfather said in a faint, tremulous voice. What have you been doing? I hesitated a little before speaking. What are you, grandfather? Right here in front of you, can't you see me? Reassured, I crept toward the voice and sat down when my toes touched the mud elevation that served as grandfather's bed. He was still stretched out upon it, Miller straw serving as his mattress and a burlap sack filled with sand as his pillow. He was dressed the same as I always had seen him in his ancient Baba.
It took a while for my eyes to adjust to seeing in the dark. Grandfather had never taken me into his room before, and I was anxious to inspect his secret dwelling. Grandfather's room was, in truth, a magic workplace, so unfamiliar it did not even seem that I was still in our family compound. Each wall held a row of containers of various sorts. Most were clay pots, but others were just battered old cans and bottles. Each one seemed to contain something. From the ceiling hung dozens of gourds. Some, almost all the same size, were lined up perfectly against each wall. Bigger gourds formed a circle around the center of the ceiling. Another circle of gourds formed a smaller ring around the tiny opening of the roof. The arrangement of these clay pots, tin cans, and gourds seemed to fit together somehow in an intricate and interrelated pattern. They were the work of someone who knew perfectly well what he was up to. A rope coming through the opening in the ceiling was tied to each gourd, and all the gourds were tied together in a complex design that finally terminated at grandfather's bed. The artistry of this was amazing. Have you been into this room before? Grandfather asked, drawing my attention back to him. He had been watching me without saying anything all the while I looked around. Surprised, I protested, but you've never let me in. That's right. As long as my departure was not yet decreed, I could not allow you in here until you reached the age of initiation. In the dim light, I could see him looking at me with eyes full of tenderness. I could think of nothing to say. He continued, soon I will go. But before I go, I must tell you the message of your ancestors. Grandfather put on a grave face and gazed up at the ceiling as if his eyes were fastened on the beyond. Malidoma, you're not yet prepared to hear what I am about to tell you, but perhaps it is better that you're not prepared. Don't stop me while I talk. I will not speak out of my own thoughts, nor is what I am telling you just a story. It is a set of things about you that you must keep in mind as you grow up. The spirit behind the things you see in this room is using me to talk to you now. It has no mouth, but I have one, and we are friends. You understand? If you do not understand, do not worry. It does not matter right now. Later, when you're older, somebody will remind you of what I said today. Grandfather was right. When I became older and was ready to hear, Giso, one of the elders of my tribe, helped me to remember. So what I tell you now flows from that remembering brought about by Giso, who understood the painful uniqueness of my destiny and hoped to help me to fulfill it after I became an initiated man. Every word my grandfather said that day was said slowly. Every sentence was given an interminable time for utterance. Every sentence was followed by a long silence, grave and filled with meaning. It seemed as if grandfather had suddenly ceased to be human. He was disconnected from his voice as if somebody else next to him were speaking through him. I could feel the presence of that spirit being below the sand pillow upon which rested grandfather's head.
Malidoma. The sweat of one person has significant the sweat of one person has significance only when it serves everybody.
Mm, mm,
You have been designated to follow the white man so that you may serve as the eye of the compound, the ear of your many brothers and the mouth of your tribe. Remember my words. You came from the water, which in our tradition is a symbol of peace and reconciliation. This water has a direction in our mythology. The north, the direction you face each time you stand in a place where the sun rises on your right. This is a place where those who have something to say to the souls of others come from. Now you must go west to learn the wisdom of the people there and represent to them the truth we profess. You are going to be initiated into the white man's witchcraft. If people ask you to do it, I grieve for you. Many ambushes await you, but my spirit will stand by your side. Very soon you will leave your family. It is happening already, and very soon I will not be here with you anymore. In times of turmoil, however, Tenjin, the god of the land, will be your shelter, shielding you from the storms of antagonism and blunt hatred. Your journey will never be a lonely one, but from it you'll never come back whole. The ways of the whites consume. When you come back, what you have learned outside the tribe will look suspicious to all of us. You will be only partly a daggerer. You will suffer great frustration, for you will call for a father who will not be here to console you. You will call for a mother who will want you to act as you used to before she will listen to you. Later, when you must go away once more from the warmth of your family compound, you will be forced to make up a new world for yourself. It will be a world where Patrice will be very present and Malidoma will be absent. Do not be confused when this happens. The dagger rite of initiation must be completed before you come to full understanding of who you are. In your labyrinthine journey in the white world, the world of iron, learn to catch the thought behind the machine or it will swallow you. Grandfather seemed to have completely disappeared from my sight. Although I was seated right next to him, I could no longer see him. The voice I was hearing had ceased to have a location, but seemed to be coming out of the numberless cabinets, containers lit lining the room. It was as if the walls themselves were speaking, the sound of it echoing everywhere as if in the bell jar. Grandfather had taken me to a world of wonder, for I myself was transformed. Thousands of images of a civilization I had never seen rushed at me, all alive and real. Immense metal birds gliding high above the sky, their bellies loaded with humans, dwellings and roads covering the earth as far as the eye could see, houses that challenge the void of heaven and dwarf men, trees, and anything else around them. You talking about airplanes and shit, helicopters, skyscrapers. I began to feel a kind of vertigo that made me want to lie down. And and lying down, however, I never reached the cold floor of grandfather's room. I was suddenly transported into a higher region of my consciousness where I stopped being a child. I was simply a knower without age. I had never seen nor dreamed of such a place before. From there, I understood perfectly what my grandfather was saying. Stunned, suspended in my thoughts, I kept listening to the voice coming through grandfather. A long, long time ago, the whites came into the land of our people and waged war against us. They were equipped with enormous machines that roared like an approaching storm as they took the life away from our tribesmen. Guns. But in the end, we won the battle thanks to the magic of the pinto, the upside down arrow. It sowed in them the seeds of death. I shot at myself countless times from this room. It saved the brief for and the dagger for a while. The white men died without ever knowing what killed them. After that, we had peace, but not for long. Very soon, more white men appeared. The French came from the west and the English from the east, and we were caught in the middle. We sent our children and women into the thick of the forest, and all initiated males were requisitioned to die for the tribe. Your great grandfather trained more people in the secret of the pinto. Animated by the fever of their last victory, our men were confident. The war raged for an entire season. For as more as these white pigs were sent to their deaths by a supreme warrior, Pinto even more appeared as if by enchantment. During the day, our men were in a pretty bad state, but that was when those pigs fought best. Then their machines, their guns, roared iron into our men by the hundreds. But at night, the whites would disappear into the forest, a place not at all hidden to the Pinto. The dreadful arrow would send death to their sleeping places and come back to be recharged. Thus, they won by day, and we won by night. Then one day, one of the men who guarded the women's secret hiding place came and told us a strange story. He said some white men were in the women's quarters giving them food, medicine, and clothing. The messenger himself was clothed like a white man. We were confused about what to do, for our law says that you do not hurt someone unless they hurt you. A war council was ordered, and we agreed to make peace with the enemy. Oh, woeful decision, fools all we were. No demands were made, no compromises decided. We simply ended the war by refusing to fight.
So the whites came in and settled. They built hard houses and large roads all over the area and forced our men to do the work. They even asked us to pay them taxes. They had infiltrated our territory and we could do nothing. They told us that our fetishes were disempowered and that we must cleanse our houses of them. Many heads of family did so in fear of their lives. My father was among the few who refused to obey their orders. That's why today our family is one of the largest left. Those who threw away their fetishes died shortly after. The Tenjin made sure of that. The families who obeyed the white man were dispersed. Dozens of families were thus wiped out in no time. So you see, some say that the white man became smarter, stronger than us through the help of the avenging spirits of the ancestors. He conquered us through confusion. Your father is one of their victims, but fortunately, he is a victim who is still alive. And do you know how? Because we did not destroy our fetish. One day he too will come to understand why one should never, under any circumstance, forsake one's own ways. If you do not abide by the ancestral law, you tacitly ask for your own punishment. In your
Uh-huh.
father's case, they echoing right here, it's iteration. In your father's case, it was prophesied that his heart would melt in the face of the white man's fetish, that he would follow him. But it was not part of the plan that he go too far into this maze, just far enough so that our people would have something to work on, a sample of the white man's ways. Your father's illness was a warning from the ancestor that he should stop. See, his troubles have made him wiser. I don't think he wants to travel anymore. Grandfather paused. The strange vibration in the room stopped. My consciousness shifted. I was back in the everyday world and could now see him as a normal man. His face was shining with sweat as if it had been anointed with sacred oil. His cheeks were smooth and round and had almost no wrinkles, as if he had reclaimed his youth. He looked 20 years younger. His eyes, wet with tears, were shining with intensity, and I wondered why he had been crying. He looked like somebody who had just come back from the emotional intensity of a funeral rite and was still in the process of adjusting to the ordinary world. He was soaked with sweat. His double voyage into the future and back to the past had taken a great deal of energy. Later, when I was older, I will recall this moment with grandfather as the most intense learning experience of my life. Outside, the burning disk of the sun was slipping toward its resisting place. Its rest its resting place. I thought of my parents on the farm far away and how they were getting ready to return home and take their hard-won rest. Suddenly, the sound of a breaking clay pot shattered the silent air, probably the one we had used for dinner the night before. Nobody ever had time to clean them before going to sleep. People worn out by an entire day of heavy labor, who must be up at dawn to repeat the same monotonous work, have no time for housework. The noise was immediately followed by the sound of hooves. The main gate had been left open and the goats and sheep had crept in, searching for scraps of food to supplement their diet of grass. Go kick these animals' asses out of the yard, grandfather ordered. I jumped to my feet, ready to run out and chase them out of the compound. And close the gate before you come back, he added. I was already at the door. The animals knew somebody was coming because they all turned and ran out quickly before I could kick the ass of even one of them. They'd have broken the clay pot and licked out anything that tasted like food. I knew that when my mother got home, she would storm at me for my negligence in forgetting to close the door behind me when I returned from my trip to the baobab tree. But there was nothing I could do about that now except shut it quickly and rush back to grandfather's room. It took you long enough to return. Didn't those goats want to leave? Come, let me finish with you. Then you can go wait for your parents. I would like to take a rest.
I would like to die now. This nigga, this nigga, that's how you know what I'm saying? Like grandfather dying, shit that's normal ain't even happening. Like nobody there, goats and shit breaking out the cage. Nigga, the energy is just different type
Mm-hmm.
shit.
Clay pots breaking and shit.
Yeah. You see the whole room though, is like clay pots on the ceiling. Nigga had a whole
Hmm.
experience.
It
Grandfather
made
chant.
me honestly, it made me think of the pot of water that he would use to be able to tell what was going on with that was like his connection to the spirit realm, Jai, like, right?
Surveillance cameras.
Yeah, that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right. They talk about the
Upside
simplicity of
down
it.
shit on the ceiling type shit. Gangster shit. Alright. Grandfather was sitting him down, leaning back against the sand pillow. I approached and settled at the bottom of his sleeping mat, which was warm and soaked with sweat, as if he had just sat up. Presently, he resumed his unearthly aspect and a voice began speaking, shrilly through his body again. Very soon you will leave this house to investigate the land of the Napula, the white man, he began. It will not be an easy experience. In fact, it will be the hardest thing you will ever do. I'm in pain for you, but there's nothing I can do about it. What is decreed is decreed. Our ancestors have told us that the best way to know who the Napula is to get closer to him. So this is what his pops was supposed to do, but his pops went too far, and you know what I'm saying? Actually wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be like he's supposed to just go get a little bit, come back, bring it to the, you know what I'm saying, bring it back to the culture. But his pops went all the way there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, all right, it's on you now. Our ancestors told us that the best way to know who the Laputa is to get closer to him. Iron cuts iron. But iron can only cut iron if it rubs itself against iron. The desire for such knowledge is good, but actually getting that knowledge is another story. Let the ancestors' will be done. Remember, however, that in the process of fulfilling your life's mission, you must not forget that your roots are here with us. I say this because I know the hardships that await you. That's the thing. People forget what their roots are, and they be like, "My roots is in Jesus."
Mm.
You will soon be shot into the void like an arrow, flying like a bird, diving away an alligator dive to the bottom of the river. But remember, the arrow shot into the air always returns to the earth. The bird, however high it may fly, never fails to return to the ground. The alligator can dive deep into the water, but it must always return to the surface to breathe. Remember where you come from. The day you plucked in a pool of secret, run. Even if you are at the other side of the world, run back and tell us. You are Berifio, my brother, the former priest of the tribe. You hold the destinies of the thousands of souls, the souls of your people. Remember to suffer for them is a credit to your name. Be prepared, Berifo. You have come back for that. I salute you. Now I must go. Saying this, grandfather stretched and laid back down on the mat with his eyes fixed upon the ceiling. I could think of nothing to say. I did not really comprehend what he had told me anyway. Understanding would come later when I was older and was helped to remember. Grandfather closed his eyes and remained still as if sleeping. My thoughts slumbered in response to the stillness, and I could not decide whether to leave or to stay in this darkening room. My indecision embarrassed me, but at the same time, I felt a deep peace flowing into my body to my back. It seemed as if a spirit was breathing fresh air into me. The freshness invaded my body, and I became so cool and so relaxed. I thought I was going to fall asleep too. I do not know how long I remained in that state. What I do remember is the return of the field workers from the farm and the great explosion produced by my mother as she dropped a load of dry wood in the middle of the yard. These sounds dragged me back to reality, and I wondered how quickly the day had passed. Slowly, I crept. Good night. Slowly, I crept toward the doorway, avoiding the row of gourds in the middle of the room. Outside, it was dark. The sky, as usual, was peopled with countless bright spots, all dancing to the rhythm of the unheard drum. Far in the west, I could still see the place where the sun went down. Everything else was shrouded in a veil of mysterious darkness. Soon my father arrived. He pushed his English bicycle into the yard and rushed into grandfather's room. I walked around searching for my mother, for I hadn't eaten a whole day and was mournfully hungry. I found her catching her breath in the huge hall. As if knowing what I was coming for, she pointed to her left breast and assumed the quiet position. Even though I had been weaned a long time ago and was used to eating solid food, my mother still breastfed me from time to time as a snack when no food was readily available, or when she sensed that I needed tenderness and reassurance. The day with my grandfather had been bewildering and had stretched my young limits to the utmost. I do not know how long I hugged my mother. I do not know how long I hugged my mother's breast. Suddenly, I was startled by the noise of an engine outside the house. My mother pushed me away and rushed out. Disoriented, I remained in the dark for a while, then followed her. Father Maylot, the Jesuit priest who always visited the family, was standing there in the yard speaking very loudly and very bad dialect. Several people surrounded him, most of them from the other compounds. Father Maylot barked out a command, and my father and one other person went to grandfather's room and came out carrying him. The little crowd joined in the carrying, and together they moved him out of the yard. I followed them. They put grandfather and a few of his personal belongings into the car. Shortly after, the car groaned and illuminated the whole yard, turned around and headed toward the mission hill. My father grabbed his bicycle. I ran to him and asked, "Where are they taking grandfather?" "To the dispensary." "I'm going with you," I said. "The night will be very cold and you are not well protected. Just go inside and wait here. I will return." I screamed and yelled and fell down on the ground, pedaling my feet in the air with frenzy. My father sighed deeply as if he didn't know whether to get angry at me or not. Next thing I knew, I was behind him on the baggage rack. The dispensary was built a few years after the missionaries settled in Dano. It was the same dispensary that I had avoided being born at. The first Jesuit to arrive in our territory looked like an explorer. He spent his first 6 months living in a hut down the hill, an administration building connected to the white colonial government, and the church now sits on the site where he used to live. He paved the way for the other Jesuits by maintaining a steadily growing Christian community. When others came, they built a huge house for themselves and a church for everybody, all on top of the hill. From the valley eastward, everyone could see the steeple of that church. I knew none of the people up there except for Father Malot, who was a frequent visitor to our village. Next to the
Next,
church were a couple of houses where sick people. Oh, you go ahead.
nah. It was a pause. If you wouldn't go ahead, do your thing.
Next to the church were a couple of houses where sick people were treated with modern medicine. It was there that grandfather was taken. A pudgy man examined him as we waited in silence. Next, grandfather was taken to the dispensary room, but he lay unconscious. Calling his name, I rushed over to him and grabbed his hand. Don't touch him, my father roared. But grandfather opened his eyes and seeing me smiled faintly and closed them again. I sat next to him, my left hand in his right hand. Nobody said anything more. All the faces around me were shrouded with sadness. I didn't know why, but I did not care as long as grandfather was there.
When I woke up in the morning, I was not beside grandfather, but in one of the corners of the tiny cement room. I stretched my legs, rubbed my eyes, and looked around me. The sun had already risen. Its penetrating rays were already biting my skin through the corrugated iron roof of the building. Grandfather was still lying where I had seen him last night, and he seemed to be in a deep sleep. I got up and walked to him. Picking up one of his hands, I called him aloud. He did not answer. When I called again, he remained quiet. My father was not around, and I didn't know any of the many villagers in the room. I sensed, however, that they must be the leaders of other compounds. I looked at them for help to find out why grandfather was still sleeping. You will never speak to him again, said one of the strangers. He has become a spirit, another one said. I still didn't understand, but I hesitated to ask for further explanation. Confused, I said quietly. It was a long time before my father returned with the doctor who had examined grandfather the night before. The doctor did the same ritual and left. Then my father stood in front of grandfather's bed and put on a grave air. He held up something that looked like a tail mounted with two handles, decorated with cowrie shells, stretched it out, and put it in grandfather's hand. As soon as the tail touched his hand, grandfather opened his eyes and sat up, all in slow motion. His behavior seemed strange because he wouldn't let go of the tail my father had given him. He could not use his other hand to support himself while maneuvering to sit up. This seemed very odd to me. Ordinarily, grandfather took an endless time to get up from his couch. He would begin by grinning and groaning while he turned himself over. Then he would grip the mat with his hands and one by one bend his legs until he was on his feet. But this time, nothing of the sort happened. Grandfather's torso sat up as if moved by an invisible hand, then became immobile. Following the same impulse, his legs bent over the side of the bed, although they were cracking like dry leaves. Fascinated and speechless, I watched. Everybody seemed captivated. Then he began to rise as if under a slow and steady impulse, his body resembling one of the village spiritual spirit statues. I was not only fascinated but also afraid that he might lose control and break his back. No one could possibly get up this way without using one or both of their hands to balance their weight. But grandfather's only contact with the ground was with his bare feet, and one could see the muscles of his lower part of his legs compressed and straining under the thin, dark skin. Presently, he was standing straight up. This miracle completed, I rushed to him and grabbed his right hand, the one that was free. My father made a movement to stop me, but decided against it. Keeping his authoritative tone, my father spoke to my grandfather in a secret primal language. Grandfather said nothing in response. He just walked out of the room, preceded by my father and followed by the delegation. I walked at his right side, still holding his hand. He moved strangely, too straight, too rigid, unnatural, yet very conscious of any obstacle. Once outside, the crowd joined to make a circle around us. Although I was too young to understand the significance of this ritual, or why all these people were not speaking with one another, I was glad to return home with grandfather, even if he did not seem to want to speak to me. The 4 mile walk took an equal amount of hours. Did people don't walk very fast. They are not in a hurry. We must have reached home around noontime, for upon our arrival, we were each walking on his own shadow. People we encouraged along our way stopped, left the road, and assumed a somber mood. At home, men and women were everywhere, having come from all directions to wait for grandfather. Those who had arrived earliest were sitting under the shadows of the trees surrounding the compound. Others stood under the biting sun. Many more were still arriving. When we reached the yard outside of the main gate, our delegation stopped. 5 old men came out of the compound and saluted us in mystical terms, each one kneeling down with a grave air. I felt proud to be at the center of so much attention. They murmured something to grandfather. He continued to be unresponsive, but they did not seem to mind his silence at all. I'm going to stop here for a moment to make a point. Different cultures have different relationships with their dead, and I know very well that in a culture of skyscrapers and high technology, dead people don't walk. Instead, they are placed in nice, expensive caskets and driven to the cemetery in elegant black cars. They are put quickly out of sight so their life can go on.
God damn.
Can we
Why do you
talk for a minute? Can we talk?
go ahead?
Can we talk about like I don't even know. First of all, the way that he was even describing being in like this other world, the way he like when you said it, I didn't realize until you said that he was talking about planes, talking about metal birds, all this stuff. I was just like, what? What is he saying?
So like when his grandfather channeled, so this is why his grandfather started crying because he told it to his brother.
Mhm,
So his grandfather channeled spirit and allowed spirit to speak.
mhm,
Now he's realizing he's speaking to his brother. So he's crying. You feel me? When the 4-year-old kid is getting these spiritual downloads, he's telling him about the future. He didn't just say it, he showed him.
mhm,
Like literally took him, like literally traveled with him and showed him and said, this is what you're gonna have to go see. You're gonna have to go into this world, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Da 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 da. And then he took him back to the past
mhm.
and showed him shit in the past. And was like, look at what you know what I'm saying, what your great grandfather did, what my father did, and was showing him all these images, literally traveling with him. And that's why he was like, look, like my look at granddaddy sweating so crazy. I could see that all that time traveling took a toll on him. He's showing me all of the shit. He showed him all of the wars and shit that happened, the upside down. He was showing the upside down arrow and all of this shit. Like he was showing him
Mhm,
everything spiritually through
mhm.
this type shit. So that's why I'm reading and I'm like, yeah, metal birds and buildings that cut through the sky.
Skyscrapers.
He's describing it, but I'm like, yeah, I like his poetic language type shit.
Right.
His
I was
birds
like,
and
yo.
humans inside their bellies. I'm like airplanes. So he's and then he's talking about machines with metal things. He was talking about guns, but he just described it in a very, very like poetic way. So I liked it though. I like how he describing that shit. But the niggas, you know what I'm saying? He got, you know what I'm saying? I like how the magic is subtle. You feel me? It's subtle. I like the way he describes it. And I'm sure that if I was him, it would probably, you know what I'm saying? Like he probably, like, I couldn't even describe it for real. You feel me? Because how do you describe some of this shit in words? Especially in this English quick fix language.
Mm. That was something else that we seen in the introduction about basically this whole book basically was difficult and took a long time to be written because he didn't experience these things in English. And it's really hard to translate experiences because the languages are very, very catered to culture. You know what I mean? And so basically, Malidoma says that in that intro about English being a quick fix language for consumers. You know what I mean? And we live in this consumer culture and I mean, wow, just wow to this book. Like, and the fact, I'm glad that he really stopped. The last paragraph that I read, he was just like, I'm gonna pause here for a second just so we understand. Like, ain't nobody trying to pretend like you would ever see this. You know what I mean?
Type
In the
shit.
places where you know, have these things that are very, very, I guess for me, I would say very consumerist, you know, you don't see people honoring the dead and doing these rituals. And he said, why? Because they're ready for it to be out of sight and out of mind so they can keep moving and keep consuming. Like,
You get back to it. Funeral real quick, wake real quick, get the fuck out of my face. I'm gonna go about my life.
straight
Like
like that.
little shit, like funeral, you know what I'm saying? Like for real, like niggas die, niggas be like, I'm just trying to say my love, I'm out of there. Like niggas want nice quick funeral, you know what I'm saying? Hour, let's go. Like, you about to see how long this funeral about to be?
Let's
Like,
go. Look,
keep
this is
this
day
not
one of the day two, I think, of the ritual, actually. Day two, right here, because he started it right when he
nah,
put
this
the
is not
ash
even
at
day
the
one.
door.
It's not even day one. It's not.
It was day one.
Ain't even day one. He ain't even die yet. He wasn't even there yet.
He was dead when they was walking. He said, we know dead people don't walk.
Nah,
He
he
said, I
died
know
when
very well.
he died at the white man hospital, the dispensary. So like at the
Yeah.
crib, he was doing all that ass shit. He wasn't there yet.
Well, I know, but technically they knew he was about to die, so I'm including that as part of the dead ritual. Like that was day one of the ritual, and then the next day two, he died.
Type shit.
You know, hey drinker, come
Like
on,
I'm just saying, like
red
the
cup
funeral
drinker.
ain't even start yet. Like the funeral ain't like funeral have yet.
Right.
But you about to see how long this shit is. So why do the
Yeah, I feel
dead
like
walk?
you was reading without me or something. So well, I'm about to see how long it is. What you know?
Why do the dead walk where I come from? They walk because they are still as important to the living as they were before. They are even more meaningful, as the breadth and depth of our funeral ritual shows. We do not hide their bodies away because we want to see those bodies to help us remember the person's life and all the good they did for us. So ain't no caskets at the funerals. We need to remember that they are well on their way to becoming an ancestor. We must see our dead so that we can truly mourn them all the way through with our restraint to release the
Mm,
grief from our hearts once for all.
wow.
True. True, every dead person is not asked to walk. My grandfather died on a mission hill, that's in a foreign land. He was an elder and a leader of great power and should have died at home. The only way to correct the death of such an important person when it occurs in the wrong place is to walk the dead home. Once the funeral ritual is at an end, his body will be carried to the burial ground. Grandfather's eyes were peering at something beyond him, his face and body expressionless. Of all of us, he was the least concerned about what was going on. Presently, the people were cleared away from the gate and he walked into the compound. Looking behind me, I noticed that the crowd under the trees had stood up and were reverently taking part in everything that was going on. Beyond them, the whole millet field was colored with men and women in blue, white, yellow, red, and black clothing still arriving. As I marveled at this colorful panorama, I was dragged into the present by a pull from grandfather who had begun walking again. We walked into his room. There, a kerosene lamp cast a faint yellow light, disturbed now and then by by the wind penetrating from the skylight in the room. As grandfather moved toward his mud bed, he looked both comic and dramatic. His stiff movements and his almost ghastly air gave him a look that was both authoritative and indifferent. He leaned forward just as he was about to reach the low elevation of his bed. He lifted his left foot and put it hesitantly upon the platform as if doubting the propriety of his actions. Then he stepped straight up until he was standing on the bed. Once his equilibrium was established, he turned around and faced the entrance door as if to contemplate the small crowd that had followed him into the room. There was no real eye contact, however, because grandfather was now existing in a space that was beyond the living. Although he was physically present with us, he was only really alive in the world of the spirits. My father came to grandfather and took the hyena tail out of his hand while two robust men supported grandfather from the back. Grandfather let himself fall into their hands, and with due ceremony, he was laid out on his couch. Once again, he looked as if he were deeply asleep. Disoriented by his sudden immobility, I looked around me in search of an explanation. The
Hmm.
crowd outside was growing rapidly, and I could tell something was very wrong. A little more than 24 hours ago, I had been transported into the future by grandfather's speech. Now he was sleeping peaceably, as if indifferent to what was going on around him. 5 or 6 men who had accompanied us to grandfather's room were now busy. Some were rearranging the order of the gourds and cans in the room. Others were preparing medicine or lighting aromatic plants. My father had once again disappeared, but I could hear him speaking to a group of old women who were standing at the entrance of grandfather's room. Get the material ready for the meal and warm up the water. Make haste. Everything must be finished before the sun cools down. He came back to grandfather and proceeded to strip him of the remnant of clothing he wore. Then he massaged his body slowly and carefully. One of the men brought a clay pot containing some foam or liquid, inside of which was a double-edged knife. My father lifted grandfather's head while another man proceeded to shave his white hair. He wetted a portion of the snowy skull, then cleaned away whatever hair was there. Then he collected the fallen hair, handed it up to another man near him, who passed it to another, and so on until I lost track of it. The shaving went very slowly, and there was nothing left. The hairdresser put the knife back into the pot, then pronounced some lugubrious words. The gourds and cans in the room responded by knocking against one another. At that moment, the woman entered the room. They put down an enormous clay jar full of warm water and three other medium-sized pots. One contained more water, another some seasoning ingredients, and the third one some millet flour. The woman left without a word. The men rushed to the pot full of warm water and carried it to grandfather's deathbed. They mixed the water with three different roots and two liquid substances that they packed out of some of the surrounding gourds and washed his body carefully. Grandfather's last toilet took an interminable time. Those who labored on him were singing solemnly in harmony, a sort of genealogical recital. I can still recall some of the names, and later I understood that they referred to my very ancient ancestors. After that, the men recited the prayer of the dead. Other men who had not entered into the earlier singing now sang the canticle to the spirits who know no death. These spirits live in the underworld, in the air, in the water, and in the fire. The awesome voices of the men tremulously mounting in the air like a mournful complaint, were seconded by other voices outside of the entrance. The woman's song was the most thrilling. Men who heard it groaned a brief Sanway, which means in our language, "Oh Father." The woman's shrill voices rose sharply like daggers and penetrated every heart, blocking our throats, sending chills all through our bodies and causing tears to well up from our eyes. I was crying not because grandfather was dead, for up till now I had but a faint idea of what death meant, but because these female singers made such a miserable lament that I was beginning to suspect some sort of tragedy had occurred. The room was suddenly overtaken by a blanket of darkness, thick and heavy, punctuated here and there by something that resembled a yellow glitter of mild lightning. Behind the singing voices, there was a continuous murmur, an unfailing, monotonous buzzing sound that was coming out of the surrounding gourds and cans. They were hitting against one another as if moved by the ropes that held them in place. Next, I heard the sound of marching feet, pounding and grounding everywhere in the tiny room. The darkness became deeper and more terrifying. Footsteps also sounded on the roof of the house, and little bits of dirt falling from the ceiling seemed to indicate that the roof was groaning under the weight. Inside the invisible marching, but inside the invisible marching people shouted at each other cacophonously and stomped loudly in every direction, bumping into invisible objects that fell catastrophically on the ground. The noise was getting to be unbearable. Yeah.
Then, they got some good words in this book, and I like this. All right, then everything began to revolve in a circle around me. I had the feeling that I was on a raft that kept turning and turning and not going anywhere. On the raft were half a dozen elderly people, each one my grandfather and each one making fun of me. They were laughing loudly, mindless of whatever I wanted to ask them. I kept trying to speak to them, but my mouth wouldn't form the questions that my eyes kept asking over and over. The raft finally took off into the air. In an ultimate movement, it dived into the void like a spaceship. Overtaken by fear, I yelled. Everything ceased instantaneously, and I saw my father bending over me with an anxious face, asking, "Are you all right?" I realized I was lying next to grandfather on his bed. Uh, uh, they had dressed him up the way they dress everyone who dies. I wondered what had happened to me. Singers, washers, and hairdressers had finished their Kabbalistic activities and were now all interested in another no less mysterious one. They had transformed grandfather's room into a kitchen where everything was happening upside down. A clay pot full of water was boiling quietly on the ceiling, its bottom sitting against the roof. Beneath it was a fire dancing inside a triangular fireplace, its boundaries marked off by medium sized stones, each of which could easily have weighed 10 kilos. The whole fireplace, fire, stones, clay pot, and water were suspended as if by enchantment on the wooden ceiling. Beneath this vertiginous fireplace, men were busy readying the many condiments necessary for the preparation of a meal outside the force of gravity. I was fascinated by this upside down boiling pot of water. The whole thing appeared to me like a joke. I had never seen anything like this before, and grandfather had surely never mentioned it. One of the men poured some flour into a basket of water yellowed by a mixture of herbs, stirred it carefully, and tossed its contents toward the boiling pot. Instead of falling down onto the floor, the contents obeyed another law. They landed in the boiling water, which splashed upward onto the wood of the ceiling. Everybody went about their tasks as if unmindful of how strange their activities appeared. It was as if they were operating in a circle that defied natural laws, involved in a strange conspiracy to challenge the great master of the universe. Soon, the clay pot was filled with the gelatinous mass, which roared like a volcano in action. Cooking vapors filled the entire room. The man who had poured the flour into the boiling water grabbed a flat wooden stick called a vul and plunged it into the roaring, sticky porridge in the upside down pot. He began stirring clockwise, then counterclockwise. Meanwhile, another man standing next to him poured dry flour from a basket he was holding into the pot at regular intervals. The millet cake in the clay pot was slowly increasing in size, thickening, hardening, and making the stirring movements harder and harder. The first man was perspiring, his muscles contracting with each movement. He and the cakes were now growling in unison. When the first man was finished, he put his voles down on the floor next to the second man, grabbed two pieces of cloth to protect himself from the heat, and took hold of the clay pot and its contents and pulled very strongly, holding his breath. The clay pot resisted for a while, then gave up and rushed toward the ground. The man quickly executed a rolling gesture, turning the clay pot upright to avoid pouring any of its contents onto the ground. That way, container and contents were deposited safely on the floor of the room unspoiled. Almost immediately, another man performed the same rolling movement backward with another clay pot half filled with water. The new pot rose in the air, made a U-turn in the middle between the ground and the ceiling, and backed up onto the fireplace. Before the water began to boil, the man had already put some okra flour in it, along with some condiments. He added some dry monkey meat and a huge number of other medicinal products. In the meantime, other people were serving out the millet cake. One portion of the cake was put near grandfather's deathbed. The other portions were placed in smaller pots and distributed to the women who were waiting outside at the entrance. When the sauce in the second pot was cooked, the men took it down just as they had taken down the previous pot. The sauce was also served into clay pots and distributed in a portion placed near grandfather's bed.
At that time, the cooks and my father approached grandfather and sat around the still smoking meal. My father pulled out the terrible hyena tail once again and put it into grandfather's left hand. Grandfather had been sleeping all this time, indifferent to what was going on in his own room. Now he jerked as if bitten or shaken by an electrical shock. He opened his eyes and fixed them on the ceiling. My father said, "Father, get up. The last meal has arrived." Eat with us this food that strengthens the body and keeps the mind in a state of wakefulness. You cannot begin a trip to the ancestors on an empty belly. It is a long trip, a difficult journey. Eat with us that which while living you never wanted to miss. Grandfather did not answer. He stretched slowly upward until he was sitting. He gazed inquiringly from left to right, from right to left, as if to inspect his own room, then brought his lifeless eyes down to the dish in front of him. Everybody was silent and fascinated. There was a calabash full of warm water in their grandfather, and he plunged his right hand into it and washed, while his left hand continued to hold the hyena tail. Then he picked up a piece of the millet cake, plunged it into the sauce, and carried the whole toward his mouth. 5 pairs of eyes vigilantly watched his every gesture. I noticed that the food disappeared before reaching the interior of his mouth. An invisible force simply absorbed it before it reached his lips. Nobody said anything or seemed surprised by any of this, so I stopped watching. Following the example of other guests, I began eating. I was hungry enough to swallow an entire roasted monkey and a few gallons of his gravy. We ate without a word as Dagger customs command. The mouth that eats cannot be the mouth that talks. Grandfather was the first to stop eating. He let his hand fall into his upper leg for a short time. Then he lifted it toward the calabash and again washed his fingers. That activity took a comparatively long time. He did not seem to be in a hurry at all. When he finished, the other men followed his lead. All washed their hands, and I was left alone to eat the leftovers. I pulled the 2 clay pots and their contents nearer to me. Everybody was looking at me. Without a word, I understood that I better eat fast. Years later, when I was older, I would come to understand what I had seen that day. The out of gravity culinary art was a secret practice performed only when the leader of exceptional standing died. The day of my grandfather's death was the first and the last time I ever saw it. But as things changed in our tribe, the practice passed away, perhaps along with the secret. Today, it has become a tale. But for those who had direct contact with the reality of Satulmo, as it is called, it is a sad thing to realize how much my people have lost and how much yet of our reality is to be buried in a pit of oblivion. The food preparation within the precinct of reverse gravity was a symbolic enactment of the realm that the great ones enter through death. By leaving his body, grandfather had escaped the laws of physicality. Therefore, only food cooked according to the laws of the new realm he now inhabited could be eaten and digested effectively. There are secret plants in nature that are very powerful. By using some of these plants, known only by healers and men and women in touch with the great medicine of Mother Earth, our cooks were able to produce for a short time an area of free gravity. The sun was about to set. The compound was black with men and women, girls and boys who had arrived from the four corners of the tribal territory to pay homage to Bakai, my grandfather. I ate faster. The dishes were soon clean, and one of the guests took them away. With my belly full, I looked upward. I looked up toward the wooden stove that had yielded such a great meal. But there were now no traces of stove, fireplace, or fire on the ceiling above. By now, the sun had sunk behind the mountain, and a crepuscular dew had freshened the air. The wind had stopped blowing, and time was still as if waiting. My father, who had vanished for a while, now reappeared dressed in a ceremonial outfit. His huge cotton blouse had been woven by expert craftspeople. It was decorated at the neck with a circular arrangement of alligators, each one holding the tail of one in the front of it in its jaws. On the front of the blouse was an immense embroidered zodiac, a symbol of our tribal cosmogony, and the medicine wheels embroidered on the garment gave my father and the medicine wheels embroidered on the garment gave my father a powerful and occult look. At the bottom of the blouse, a series of stars of different colors made him look very wide and muscular. Beneath the blouse, which ended mid-calf, could be seen an immense pair of trousers whose ankles were decorated with a series of smartly rendered arabesques. The bottom of these trousers was so narrow that I wondered how he had managed to stick his legs through. Beneath the pants, I saw a pair of modern shoes, so highly polished they shone even at twilight. The entire outfit was topped by a tightly fitting traditional hat, shaped something like a Western beret. Slung over his back was his medicine bag made of antelope skin and filled with cowrie shells. When my father entered grandfather's room, everybody stood solemnly. I wanted to get up like everybody else, but I was paralyzed by the heavy meal I had eaten. Fortunately, I didn't have to, for in the next moment, everyone departed, leaving my father and me alone with grandfather. My father knelt down in front of his grandfather's still seated figure, took out some white powdered substance, and dispersed it into the air. Like most magical things, It smelled terrible. I was suffocating, but my father seemed perfectly at ease with the smell. Here I am, he said humbly. All these words, grandfather. At these words, grandfather opened his eyes, which had been closed since the end of the meal, tightened his grip upon a hyena tail, and said mechanically, "Everything is ready. I will relinquish the destiny of the family into your hands. Though I must go, yet I will always remain here. From the realm of the dead, I will be more useful to you. I will be there and here at the same time, because I have no flesh anymore. Son, the time has come for you to become an authority, a well of wisdom. Behind the tribe of men and women, you must stand vigilant. Sleep only when it is necessary and eat only when it is necessary. Guard the wellness of the bereaved, for the prosperity of this family is in your hands." As he spoke, grandfather's voice had changed timbre, progressing from deep and rich to thin, shrill, and extremely distant. He spoke without moving his lips, without gestures, and without intonation, but the power of his speech was incontestable. As he continued to speak, a glow, first yellow then green, came out of the crown of his head and spread throughout the tiny room. The medicine boxes started bumping against one another as if moved by an invisible force. Distant spirits could be heard behind grandfather, emitting sounds of approval at what he was saying. My father had a dramatic air. Frowning, he bent his head back in humility and abandoned himself to the will of the voice that spoke to him.
After a brief silence, grandfather continued. Son, I have preserved within myself a sense of honor, truth, and faith to our traditions. I grew up in the shadow of the sacred rites of the tribe and the family, and as a youth, I labored to use what I had learned from the school of our fathers. As I accepted more and more responsibilities, I pushed myself further than I thought I could go so that the family would prosper. Our prosperity is at its height now. Our name, the Brifor, is known everywhere, even in other lands across the big river. Remember then, the higher the rise, the more painful the fall. Mm. Keep the family's prosperity and honor up there where I have kept it. This is the least you can do, to not allow our family to sink. Let me stand next to you to continue working with you. When you are confused, I will come into your dreams and tell you what to do next. There is yet another thing that you must know about and accept for what it is. Your own experience with the new knowledge that the whites brought here must serve you well. There are dangers in being with them and studying what they know. One of these dangers is forgetfulness. If your knowledge of their ways must mean forgetting yours, I ask you to abandon this relationship with them now. But I do not believe that will happen. On the contrary, I believe that your dealings with them will prove beneficial. You will, by your privileged connection with them, prove to other families within the tribe that the dog and the cat can live peacefully together. That is why we must open the family to the new era that has enveloped the entire Black race. We must, with care, expose our children to this new wind that comes from the West. Who knows, maybe tomorrow our medicine bag will be enlarged. This is the honor of experimentation. We cannot sit with our hands folded and surrender passively to this alien threat. By sending our children to mix with these people, let us begin our quest for a resolution to our difficulties. The time has come for a new definition, new visions, new warriorship. Remember, it is the ignorance of submission that cost you a wife and 3 children. You do not want to remain passive anymore. Your experience must become useful to you now. The war against our enemy must now begin with the peace treaty. I am offering you an intelligent way to confront a problem we do not yet understand the exact nature of. Your word stops here. Farewell. Grandfather had finished his speech. A heavy silence fell upon the room, and ceasing to speak, he had ceased to be the life force of the family. Outside, the crowd had grown larger than ever, and a thick blanket of darkness was gradually overcoming the twilight. For a brief moment, my father knelt silently in front of grandfather. Then he stood up, took the magical tail out of grandfather's hand, helped him to lie down, and left the room, walking backward. No sooner had he stepped outside than an uproar filled the quiet air. An immense cry that began in the compound spread like fire, reaching every single person within hearing distance. At the same time, the sound of the funeral xylophone could be heard from the roof of our house. Two sharp notes, swiftly rendered, followed by a development at the octave. Then a central note continually sustained completed the musical message. A great chief, Bakai is his name, left this morning for the great journey. The living are mournful. Almost at once, the same sound was heard further off, transmitted by another xylophone.
I ran into the compound, attracted by the violent and sudden uproar. Women were lamenting as if caught by a boundless calamity. My mother, the most pitiful of them all, assisted by half a dozen elderly women, she was running here and there like a cow painfully stung inside her ear by a bee. The elderly woman followed her everywhere she went, running or walking in symphony with the rises and falls of her grief. Her cries had a devastating effect upon the woman around her. I too cried, moved by the pain mother was expressing, but nobody aided me in my grief. Crying without help, I walked alone outside the compound. There, the scene was even more turbulent. A couple of hundred people were offering, each in their own way, their condolences to the bereaved. Some men were literally barking in grief. Some women were whispering words unintelligible by the general howling. The women were the best vessels of pain. Their laments rose out of their throats, and the same laments would begin again. Their laments rose out of their throats and went up like a witch's fire, vanishing in mid-air as if by enchantment. Then the same laments would begin again, sharpened as if they had attained the roof of the sky and were now traversing the atmosphere in their descent to water. As if they had bodies of their own, their cries seemed to fall upon the ground, becoming grave and slow, as if chiding the ungrateful earth for having deprived them of someone they cherished. All Daguerre funerals are accompanied by great mourning, but this level of grief is even more greater than what was usually experienced. I think I think that all of these women remember grandfather's generosity. A great many of them were still alive because of him and they knew it. They mourned for his loss and for what a tomorrow without him might bring. Under the 200-year-old baobab tree in the middle of the Miller field, men and women were regrouping slowly around a pair of xylophones and a drum. Grandfather's funeral had begun.
All right.
So imagine talking to your pops on some spiritual shit. You step outside the room and everybody just starts screaming, crying.
Yeah. Yo, yo. This, I mean, the whole
They just start crying,
ritual.
running, just running. Like you walk outside, they just somebody run across screaming, and everybody just drum this music. Like immediately, funerals just get popping, just crying. No wait, no niggas don't wait no time.
But I like, you know what I really like? What they said about the fact that they make sure that they see their dead so that they can grieve without any type of, without any limitation. And I feel like, yo, like I don't think that we really have too many of us really have this intention of allowing ourselves to feel emotions here. Like they be like we do everything to literally avoid feeling things. And so it's like we don't get to process it. And so I really like the fact that they discuss the intentionality behind the way that they're going to do this funeral that is just starting at the end of this chapter, and the rituals that went
All of
into
this shit,
getting
all
in
of
it.
the shit before the funeral is so powerful. It's like, damn, what this funeral about to be like?
Right? What this funeral about to give? Because y'all definitely just blew out mine. Like, and I want to know, I'm very curious, especially with the little that we know about Malidoma's dad. How is he gonna be as the leader now of the family? Um, how is all of these things gonna manifest? I don't know. I'm really excited to read and find out about what that looks like for them. Like this is it's wild. But he also prophesied over him and was like, I think it'll be best if you don't do this, but I know you ain't gonna listen. So hopefully you make it good.
Shit. Yeah. shit different. It got me thinking about like, like all the spiritual people and shit today, and it's people who put in that work, tapped in. It's like we may not even know it. We may not even know why or what ancestors working with us and shit like that, working through us. Feel me? But the fact that we allowing the ancestors to work through us is important.
Yeah,
Feel me?
for
Cause
sure.
you feel me? Because like I think that's what it is. It's like it's that balance. It's that balance. And it's letting me know like high key, like there's always gonna be like there's always gonna be that room for us to tap in and do our ancestral rituals and shit like that. Like that ain't going nowhere, you feel me? But at the same time, it's gonna be niggas who ain't with it. And they're gonna suffer the consequences. You feel me? The consequences. Consequentiosos. But high
And
key,
everything gonna keep balancing itself though. I like what he said. He said you about to show them that cats and dogs can exist together. That's kind of what you was talking about the other day. The fact that it's all right if we not on the same type time, but we gotta get to the point where we can exist. Like and not be worried about the fact that we not all on the same type time or not be like getting in people's way or being on whatever type time that they on.
period. Feel me? That's why it's like you really can't feel bad for niggas. You feel me? You really can't feel bad for niggas who suffering and shit like that because one or two things is gonna happen from their suffering. Either gonna become a healer or they just gonna continue to do what they do. Like, you feel me? And ain't meant for them to be a healer. They just meant to suffer because I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like you can't control the lessons people learn type shit. So
Right.
just
Or
like
how they learn them.
feel me? Or how they learn them, yeah. So if niggas is suffering, you know what I'm saying? Like you could be like, oh yeah, you a healer. Yeah, I don't know that. I know that for me. You
Yeah.
feel me? High key, it's like whoever suffering for healing purposes, suffering for healing purposes. So like, we might have steps or tactic or strategies for people to tap in or feel whole and be themselves and not struggle and not have to be a victim. But it's just making me a little more aware that it's like it's that's for certain people. You feel me? Whoever that's for, it ain't like some one size fit all shit when it comes to this
Yeah.
hip.
Real talk. I actually had seen something like probably like a month ago that was just talking about how like it's healers everywhere, like in every level of life. Like it's healers that are prostitutes type stuff. There's healers that's doing literally anything, that's homeless. There's healers that I don't even know. Like this, they're everywhere. And they have to be where they at though. You know what I mean? For them to have the role and spread their light in that way. But like you said, like if they, they gotta allow themselves to do that in whatever capacity they're meant to. They gotta be open to the fact that this is what's true to you, regardless of where you are and who you surrounded by.
Type shit.
What you doing?
Um, fucking shit, like clipping my nails.
I already knew that. I just wanted you to say it out loud. Having it up. You didn't cut them, now you filing them and
but yeah, fucking. Let me see, like shit different, like like, and this was the thing is like the this shit was the 70s type shit. You feel me? So a lot of times we think about like black ritual, and then you like, oh, ancient Africa, and it's like,
like
nigga,
shit.
like, Like, bro, niggas was tapped in like yesterday. Like, it's niggas outside right now.
Actually, remember, because this he's still little, so this probably like 1960. Like this was just happening. Like my
Like,
mother was born. I think you said that your mother was born the same year as this person.
yeah.
Like that shit wild.
So like high key, like this shit is we ain't gotta, you know what I'm saying? Like when it comes to anti-gravity, upside down shit, magic and all of that shit, it ain't just ancient ancestors that was doing that shit. That's
Yeah.
literally going on right now.
Same.
Right now.
And
Right.
I also he talked about how a lot of these traditions, even like from from 1960 to when he got older, when he was writing this joint, basically was lost, and they're just stories now, you know what I mean? So if you wasn't there and witness it, you don't even think that shit real, even if you are part of the Daguerre culture. You're like,
Literally,
that's just like,
you expect niggas over here to believe shit like that.
right, right. When the people who is like the descendants of the people that was just doing it 2 seconds ago, like don't
Yeah, they
even
don't.
realize that this shit is possible and real, and so I felt like that was really, it was important for him to touch on everything he touched on, and how, I guess for me it's kind of connecting us to here, you know what I mean? Because it's connecting the fact that colonization in real life like stole a lot from us, whether we talking about on the continent, in Africa, or we talking about around other parts of the world where we ended up being dispersed at and going and moving to. Like it really, it's not just here that we missing shit. And
Right.
I think that in itself is a very, it's a powerful thing. Um and a I don't know. I don't think it's scary. I don't think anything about this is scary, with um the understanding you gave with that line about, remember we was talking about the line about preservation of cultures, once they endangered species, and it connected you to be like, at the end of the day, while that was happening over there, we had some whole other shit going on over here, and so that energy was transported to another place to feed another spiritual movement for real, and some
Like,
other people. So I can't really say it's scary or unfortunate, but it really just shows the connection that we really got with everybody, around the world, and places that's been colonized, but especially from, the continent, Africa. So
yeah, in the book he was saying how some some it's just people who at the same time someone is forgetting their culture, you know what I'm saying, because it's being destroyed. You could
mhm.
forget your culture to destroy, or you could, then there's certain people who forgetting they shit to hell. Like, I don't remember exactly how it was said, but long story short, it's like the struggle or destroying shit, like the culture that we saying, like, or the magic that we saying is being destroyed and being forgotten and being lost, is being lost so that someone else can find it elsewhere. You feel me? Like it
Mm,
really ain't no losing the motherfucker.
yeah.
Like literally, it's being evolved spiritually.
Right, 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 right.
As one
That
culture
part.
is destroyed, a whole new culture is being made. You feel me?
Hmm.
With that same spiritual energy. So it's
And
like
I,
how.
I think it's
Mhm.
I think it's just like what you said though, just the fact that it ain't nothing wrong. Like I think that's the problem. I feel like it be like these certain adaptations of um ancient religion or rituals and everything that's become these European religions or whatever. But like they always try to tell you to, like he just said, they be trying to tell you to forget where you came from. And it's like it ain't nothing wrong with learning new shit, doing different things. It's nothing wrong with that. But it's really the issue comes where you like to do this, you can't do that.
Yeah,
You
you
know what
sub-
I mean?
the issue comes when you substitute instead of
Mm-hmm.
add on.
That part.
And that's something wise when you realize that period. I heard like just the like some white niggas say some shit when it comes to wealth and being rich. You feel me? And say that same shit and it applies. He said the minute you realize that it's an and game instead of an or game, you win.
Exactly. Exactly. You know what I talk about all the time is how we be in this society of either or. And it's all that's I feel like that is one of the hugest barriers that I see among us as people, and not just as black people, but as people living on this earth, and it's but especially in America. Like it's always this thing, we everything, the conversation that we have of everything between people and ideas, it's always this competition, this combative ass shit of things that gotta be, something gotta be better, something gotta, you gotta pick one, you can't do this, like, and it's like, bruh, like, you don't gotta pick one, you don't gotta, everything don't gotta be a competition, everything don't gotta be a fight, one don't gotta be above the other, like, some shit just is. Like, that's it. Some shit
Okay?
it just exists and they can coexist. And that's why I like that line about the cats and the dogs existing together. Because it's just like, bruh, why is it not obvious that we can coexist without hurting each other and try to take away from what already exists here? You know?
Type. I mean, like, it's not definite. Like, let's not act like that's the end all be all though.
It's
Like
because I'm
the
not even
line that the
saying
cat
that.
and the dog could exist together is not like saying like you feel me? Like it's not saying like cats and dogs exist together, meaning like that's the end all be all. It's the cat and dog can exist together because they always have been existing together since the beginning of time. So
Mm,
like high key, you don't take it out. You don't take nothing from it. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not eliminating nothing from it. We're not saying, oh, why can we exist together without war? It's like, no, like just realize that we are existing together and as above, so below, man. There's a reason there's war going on. There's a reason. And if you decide to say there's no reason, then you got some inside work to do. You feel me? But we're not politicians, man. You're not a politician, you're not a philosopher. Therefore, spend less time on discussing things that you think have no meaning.
mm.
Mhm. And you know, if you want to challenge yourself, the things that you feel like are purposeless and have no meaning, find meaning in them things. You feel me? But you don't even have to. You feel me? But in all actuality, that's the thing. Like the things that we don't agree with, we decide to obliterate. That's white man shit. That's how they did us. They don't agree with certain things about our shit, destroy it.
The dude
Okay,
said that poem about that shit last week too.
type shit. So okay, war is something that we don't agree with. That don't mean you should destroy it. That don't mean you should say it has no reason or purpose or shouldn't be. You feel me?
I mean, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. I guess I just, for me, I feel like war exists because there's this competition of ideas and disagreements of ideas and what should and shouldn't, and this decision that, you got something I want type shit, and instead, like you just said, like instead of saying, "Can I get some? Can I trade? Can I do whatever?" I'm about to take this shit from you so that only I got it. Like that, I don't.
I'm saying like what I'm saying is like if you want to challenge yourself, you feel me? Then you discuss why you think war exists because because like, and hopefully you get to it exist for a purpose that you agree with. You feel me? Because the more you say something in this world exists and it shouldn't, is parts of yourself you saying shouldn't exist. It ain't nothing wrong with that, but just know that. You feel me? So that's why it's like if you really growing or you really tapped in and trying to do something for you find purpose in everything and spend less time, you know what I'm saying, finding finding things with no purpose. You feel me? Unless it's time for you to eliminate and sacrifice parts of yourself. You feel me? But high key, like there's purpose in everything. But if there's certain things I don't agree with, I'm saying like I think it would be best for me to not even discuss its purpose because I don't agree with it. Otherwise, you know what I'm saying? Like you're really criticizing yourself. So everything you just said about war, you know, like if you was to think about yourself and describe, you know what I'm saying? Like put your, like literally substitute the word war for Ife and then be like, and then say the exact thing you said just now. You know, and then it allow that lesson to be for you. You feel me? Because I don't agree with war, but because I because I believe, you know, or know in universal law, you know, the law of correspondence that's as above, so below, you know, as within, so without, then I understand that the war that's going on is beyond, you know what I'm saying? Like it's beyond what you know what I'm saying? Like it's beyond me. It's beyond me and emotion and my feelings and ego. It's beyond whatever it is. And I know that whatever we are doing on this plane as humans, as animals, it's a representation of the stars, representation of higher planes.
Mm.
Ain't nothing we doing on here that ain't, you know what I'm saying? So it ain't like
Yeah.
there's no gods looking down like we shouldn't be at war.
I mean, I don't think that is even the way that I was discussing was to say that I don't see the purpose, but to say more so if more so a if it's more so a if life was different type shit, then I wouldn't see the purpose of it. I feel like that was more so where I'm coming from because I am deep in our other conversation about everything having its place. You know what I mean? So I definitely feel that. I don't feel like it's something that it's a part of the whole, you know. It's a part of the whole at the end of the day. We talking, or more so, what I was talking, like you said, niggas is not philosophers here. They.
Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like niggas ain't philosophers. So like that's what philosophers do. Philosophers is gonna sit and sit and and give they perspective on why something is happening, why something ain't happening that they don't really know about, but just out of
Mhm.
pure questioning, just cause. And it's like we ain't got to do that.
Yeah. Well, I just said that earlier in the video. I put up a little live video on Instagram, and one of the things I was talking about the fact that there's always, you know, this bigger picture or whatever that our ancestors, God or whoever we as individual believe in and whatnot is aware of. Like it's this wisdom that they have that we couldn't possibly have, you know what I mean? And I was like, it's not our job to figure out what that bigger picture is. It's our job to just trust that there is a meaning and to, you know, work within our purpose and keep it moving. So we in agreement. We in agreement for sure.
Type shit.
You almost done with your pedicure?
Yeah. I'm not sure what you mean though. Like that there's something that our ancestors have that we didn't though. Like
Basically, just the fact that you know, like this should say on my wall, like my intuition is ancestral wisdom. You know, so when we kind of be guided to do certain things, or when we going through pain and hurt, like you said, let's say healers is going through whatever, and we be trying to, it's kind of like things that we have to go through, is things we're guided to do in the midst of it, to make it through it instead of going around it. Just saying that, like like we talk about, joy and pain is one of the same type shit. So it's not about figuring out what's next and what is the meaning of the pain and what joy is going to come from it, or how are you going to grow from it while you're in the midst. That's not the point. The point is that they both exist. They both have a purpose. They both have to exist simultaneously for us to understand each individual entity type shit. And we don't have to figure out what the grand scheme of those things are. There's everything is perfect, everything is already is balancing itself and whatnot. And so it's like we don't, like, even though there is a whole, we don't have to figure out how that part fits into the whole. We just got to be present in that part.
basically.
That make
Yeah.
more sense?
Yeah. Type shit. Yeah, I think this funeral gonna be crazy though.
Child like, child like. It's crazy that that's only chapter 3. Like, I just keep getting floored by all of the wonderful significance that's within each chapter, and we just getting started. Like,
Yeah. That chapter one, the intro is just like what the fuck. That was that this shit different.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, good looks for reading
Thank you for thank you for getting me hip to the book and asking me to read it with you, for sure. Like, this thing blessing my life. These combos is, yeah. Like we said, the last time we was reading, is also really good to talk and be able to elaborate on your own understanding of it with somebody and hear their own understanding, what stuck out to them. You know, we got different experiences, so different shit stick out and means something different. So yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. So how
You ready
long?
to get up soon?
Not really.
I was thinking we
Yeah,
can get up.
we could get back on FaceTime real quick.
Yeah,
We
that's what I was about to say. Not like go, but just get off soon.
yeah, let's you know what I'm saying? Let's let's leave this Zoom alone.
Okay.
So I'm glad it's recorded too. I look forward to seeing this shit.
Yeah. I wonder how long it was.
Uh,
We got like been on this.
send me link when we get off. I have
Like,
my settings so that whatever I record, the person I recorded will automatically get a copy. I don't know,
I don't know how to do that. So,
but we'll figure it out.
but I'm about to stop the recording right now. Peace, peace, peace.